ay. Alrighty. Greetings, if there's anyone here, let me just check. I noticed that Love Triber is here. And I think I saw Ivona. Hello, Yvonne. Greetings. So, I'm surprised anyone's here at all at the moment. We have a very interesting day going on right now. It's a very special day for the world, for planet Earth, for humanity. I know it's just another day in terms of, the heavens, the charts, our calendars, our day-to-day lives. For many, many people, today will just be as routine as any other day. It'll just have a morning, an afternoon, an evening, a nighttime, and then we just move on. But it's actually a very monumental day for global finance and global politics. Let's see, I'm going to say hello. Greetings, this is Lumination. How are you? Thank you for visiting. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. I can't imagine I'm going to be here very long. It's my Wednesday Musings, where I've been kind of venting now for a few months to get my own feelings out, my own opinions, because I felt that I had to do it. I felt an obligation after a while, because normally I've tried to present myself as being very neutral with, politics, religion, finance, and all sorts of things. But in the end, I realized, like, I'm a human being, and I have certain feelings and emotions and opinions and perspectives. I also have my own subjective truth, and I'm also aware of what lies out there as a universal truth. And all of it has been really being brought into question, especially since I started doing this channel. But right now, we're having a very significant, I would say, chapter in history. This is going to go down in the history books about what's happening in the United States today. Here is the United States. It's a very old map of the United States. It was just after the Western states became consolidated to become the United States of America that we know today. Alaska and Hawaii. Alaska's way up there, and Hawaii is way out there. It's way out it's out that way. And but they don't show up on this old map. This is not a map from 1776. It's not a map of present day. It's just an old map, and I really think it's pretty. Yeah, it's a historical time. I kind of rushed to put this show on. I'm not really prepared at all. I like to do some homework, but frankly, for the last few days, I've been a jittering, nervous, emotional, physical kind of mess. And as you know, I love to blame the planets, and so that's what I do. And I pull up the charts and I look at the weather patterns, and I say, well, it's no wonder I feel the way I do. And then I rationalize everything. I put everything through my filters. Wow, Saturn's doing this. Uranus is doing that. And then what about Pluto? What about the Sun? What about the Moon? What about Venus? What about Neptune? What about Uranus? All those things. I take all of them into account because that's one of the important ways that I calibrate my life on a daily basis now. I know it might seem strange to a lot of people, but for me, this is how things are. We have what we call a calendar, and it has popular things in it like holidays and Thanksgiving and birthdays, and everything's chopped up into things like months and weeks and days. And then we get down to our watches and our clocks, where everything's sliced up into hours and minutes, because we have this Saturn type experience here on Earth that we call physical reality. Once you get beyond Saturn in the solar system, you're going into Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. That's where things start to get a little spacey. Hello, Mr. Ross. So it gets a bit spacey once you get beyond Saturn. Saturn is the last of the visible planets. We can see Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And most of modern astrology and ancient astrology is based on observations and empirical correlations to human behavior relative to the planet's activities and movements. And it's, after whatever it is, 150,000 years or so of people sky watching, and in the last 3,000 to 5,000 years, people actively sky watching and sharing information. Once they invented things like reading and writing, things became more and more advanced, more condensed, richer and richer correlation to what we have here today in modern astrology, where for people who are interested in astrology, it's a remarkable tool for, let's say, reality checks to see where things are. Because once you kind of get an understanding of the planets and what they do and how they do their thing, and how they have no conscious awareness of what we are, what we're doing, they just do what they do. They're just these physical blobs that rotate around the sun, and they have gravitational fields that affect us all in certain ways. Excuse me. And just in the same way, the most obvious impact is from the moon itself, where we see the rising and setting of the tides, and we can see the moon very clearly. We can see its patterns and chart it through the heavens in terms of the constellations. The other obvious one is the sun, because a lot of our lives are conducted according to solar patterns, pretty much everything. And anyway, when I look at the charts of today and the charts that we've been dealing with since the channel started, especially here in 2020 and then now up to date 2021, I've been kind of going on about things, and it's a general consensus now. I wrote my little book years and years and years ago to pinpoint this time in history. All of us alive today right now are living through these historical moments. For a lot of people on Earth, this will not be a historical moment at all. It'll just be another day. It's just chaos all the time, or it's wonderful all the time, or it's always up, it's always down, it doesn't matter. But from my perspective, we are in historical times. We've had that massive Capricorn alignment, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, cyclically over the last year, last 10 years. 8 or 9 years, 10 years. And it kind of goes in waves and clusters as the Pluto energy is amplified and reduced by transits of Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, and so on. But let me go to the charts for today. So we have this little thing here today. And I'm just going to point out the usual culprits, and I'm going to add a bit more. It's going to get messy, I'm warning you. This is the 6th of January, 2021. This is a Tarot Lumination Astrodoodle. Okay, you've seen these before. A lot of people think astrology is just, hocus pocus, bogus, whatever. I happen to like it. So, here's the one we've been talking about for a long time. This is the energy of fraud, betrayal, deception, lies, especially when it comes to global communications, global truth, wisdom, knowledge. The nodal axis, it lives right here, right now. The north nodal axis, which is the journey of humankind into its truth, its honesty, its, let's say, integrity of communications. How the way people on Earth relate to each other, mostly a lot of time is through communications, body language, physical communications like we use today with smartphones and our voices and televisions and radios and computers. All of that comes under this area here with Gemini. And the Gemini North Node is indicating to us anything and everything that we have not yet discovered about our collective Gemini energy, which still needs to be discovered. And we're coming from the South Node perspective over here in Sagittarius, where we have already amassed a pile of wisdom and knowledge and information about humanity and who we are and how we are and the way we are. And we've kind of collected these universal truths to some extent and these subjective truths, and we all have our own convictions about what's right and what's wrong and what is just. What is it that we know? What is it that we don't know? A lot of people don't like to admit that there's a lot of things that they don't know, so they tend to hold on to the South Node energy here, where they are convinced of their own self-righteousness and that they can get away with anything and do anything, and so they do. And then they close their eyes to a certain reality that's happening around them. And what I'm observing here, from my perspective, my opinions, is that the whole of planet Earth is being subjective to a massive fraud, deception, and a betrayal. And it is most evidently being played out here in the United States. Okay? We've talked about this before. This is kind of what my little Wednesday rant is about. Right now, the United States is in the epicenter of a global transformational shift. If you look at the astrology of the United States and you compare it to what's been happening over the last year, You look at the astrology of China and do simple comparisons. Right now I'm kind of distilling everything into right and wrong, good and bad, love, absence of love, evil, and heaven, I guess you could say. And right now, America is coming apart at the seams. Some of you know. I've already watched a few things earlier today. It's happening live right now. America is now going live through one of its most convulsive points in modern history. We've had, World War II, World War I, very important events in American history, and a lot of blood was shed at those times. We've lived with, the things I've talked about, the Federal Reserve taking over the country and getting the federal government to work for the Federal Reserve. That's what we have today. And depending who actually gets in the office, if Janet Yellen gets into the office, the Federal Reserve will become the U.S. Treasury. And the U.S. Treasury will become the Federal Reserve. It'll just be one massive, essentially a communist dictatorship, where all money and power is centralized, just the way Pluto in Capricorn, Saturn in Capricorn, and Jupiter in Capricorn wanted that to happen on a mass global scale in the absence of love. And that's what's happening right now. Now, in the presence of love, you still have the same energy fields. Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter, especially, these last few years, where there has been a resistance and a questioning, a deep, deep questioning about our reality, the reality check police. And what we've discovered, what I'm discovering, what a lot of people have discovered in the United States, and what a lot of people across the world have discovered by observing the United States, is that the United States it doesn't really exist anymore in terms of its constitution and its independence and its freedoms. It has basically sold itself out through decades of degraded, I would say, treachery to other parties, especially the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, for personal gain, personal convenience. So we have, like we've talked about on other shows, we have this very, very extreme, super hyper elite at the very, very top of the global political and financial systems, corporations, all of it. Way, 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 way up there, way beyond us, the people. And they've realized that they have an amazing opportunity right now to literally take over command and control of the whole of planet Earth. And they're salivating. They've been building up this for a long time without the awareness of the astrological configurations. That's why I see this as a very loveless type of expression of energy from the elites, the globalists, all those folks. There's different words for it. WEF, IMF, FED, Central Bank, all sorts of agglomerations, massive corporations that are starting to plan out. Well, they're not starting. They've already planned out a new world order where we, the people, are simply going to be debased and degraded into automatons. Things like personality, identity, freedom, and privacy are going to be subjected to ruthless decimations. It's already started. It's very active in China right now, but it's now spread across the whole world, as we know. And it's the last bastion of resistance is here in the United States, and it's a very tragic thing that's happening right now over here in Washington D.C. The United States is coming apart live right now. It's being shown through what we call the elections over here. These every 4 years we have these elections for presidency, where our government, our institutions, our elected leaders have betrayed us all from all sides. And we're at the point of ultimate degradation, where it is now very, very common knowledge across the rest of the world that America has more or less sold itself out to China. way over there. It's understandable. The United States and China are essentially like a very, very sick marriage when you look at the astrology. Hello, Patricia. I didn't see you there. Hello. Well, Patricia, you've got some notes. I'm going to come to that right in a little bit because I have my personal opinions about what's happening right now, what's happening in Washington, D.C., over here in America. I've been feeling really, really queasy, sick, and anxious, very headachy, very sort of depressed, sad, and frightened recently with everything that I'm observing. And I can understand why. It's because what I'm seeing that's happening over here in Washington, D.C. is the death of the United States as we have known it. We do have a lot of people who are vigilant, loving, patriot types, Republicans who cherish the Republic, cherish our freedoms, our personal rights, our Declaration of Independence, and our Constitution, enshrined on paper and theoretically managed by law over here in Congress in Washington, D.C. Sadly, that whole thing has become so corrupted that it's like the United States is now officially, formally on its deathbed. It's not dead yet, but it's on its deathbed, where the cancerous influence has become metastatic. It's everywhere. The whole of the United States is infected with this demonic, evil agenda. Globalization, WEF, NWO, whatever you want to call it. And it's playing out in America in the politics with the Democrats and the Republicans. So it makes it very simple to say good people, bad people, winners, losers, Republicans, Democrats, and so on. And it's never really been that way in my lifetime. I've always seen the politicians as the same versions of each other, whatever side of the fence you're on. But in this particular time in history, I'm seeing a real polarization where people are really questioning everything. Where do I stand? Who am I really? What do I really want? What are my beliefs? What do I value? What do I hold dear? Do I understand how incredibly fortunate I am to be an American with the Constitution and our independence and our rights and our freedoms? Or am I someone who takes all that for advantage and I sell it out for even more advantage for my own personal gain? For example, if I was a major agro or pharma or tech company and I had strong desires to make more profits over here on Wall Street through the major banks, then there's a very good chance I would lean over to the Democrat side, even though, traditionally Republicans are seen as the hardcore business type, and Democrats are all soft and caring, and we want what's good for the people. It's all a big pile of BS. That's my perspective, and it's coming apart. It's coming apparent now, and it's like it's only when you reach the moment of final deprivation or your deathbed. I've been on my own deathbed many times, so I kind of can relate to the story. And then you go into this spiritual convulsions where you have to realize, do I really want to live? And then your body kind of takes over, the spirit takes over, and you make decisions at the most profound spiritual, animalistic level that you didn't know existed until you're actually facing death, physical death, where your life is at stake, in the moment, in the now. However, if it's at the end of a gun, or it's the end of an assault, or if it's the end of a disease, or if it's the end of your time, either way, we all face death. I've faced death many times, and I'm not interested anymore. I've learned how to avoid going there because I don't feel it's my time yet. I feel I was born now to live and witness this time. So what I've noticed, a couple of things. So getting back to this thing about Washington right now, it started early this morning on the East Coast. I'm over here in Las Vegas, 3 hours behind. But I got up early and I checked it out. I checked in with a few buddies. And what's happening is the unfolding of the election in the United States. As some of you know, President Trump is resisting the declaration of the vote by the Electoral College and by Congress and so on. And everywhere you go on Google, YouTube, there are big banners that declare that Biden has won and the Electoral College has already been decided. In fact, it's not quite decided yet. They're actually in the process of decision making right now in Congress. But the electoral vote validation is more like a formality, a ritual, because from a lot of people's perspectives, the vote has already been decided. And that's great if you're a Democrat and you want Biden to win. But it sucks if you're a Trumper and you want to have a chance to reclaim your country and get back to our principles, reclaim our republic, reclaim our constitutions, our rights, our freedoms, our privacies, all of that stuff that is associated with Donald. And so it's playing out live in Washington right now. And so there are these massive crowds, hundreds of thousands of people in Washington supporting Trump. There's no one there for Biden. Nobody's there. It's really funny to see. It's happening live. You can go on YouTube Live right now. You can see it. And so Trump was giving a lot of speech. You know how he likes to talk. He's a Gemini, sun sign. He's with his people. His sun is in his 11th house. He's got Uranus there. Uranus rules the 11th house. He's got, I think, Mercury there. And he's got the North Node there, all in Gemini. So that energy is correlating very strongly with, guess what? Let me show you. This energy here. Is it a coincidence that Donald Trump's own personal energy is highly aspecting this part of the world right now? I don't think so. And let me get back again over here. So we have this amazing live theater happening in Washington right now, where all these Trumper voters and fans and Republicans and patriots and so on are supporting Donald, their president. They want him to stay and lead us for another 4 years. And they feel that they've been, what's the word you know? Defrauded. Okay? I happen to lean towards the Trump crowd because I don't like being defrauded. I don't like being cheated or lied to. And I personally, my own subjective belief is that the American people were defrauded in this election. And it was deliberate and it was manipulated because there is so much power and money in the world of crime, especially high crime, high treason, like Wall Street, Federal Reserve, China, and the massive corporations, that they have almost unlimited amounts of money and resources to be able to perpetrate a fraud. Wow, I can commit fraud. Imagine I'm a Democrat and I want to keep in office. How am I going to do that with a country that has a free voting system? That doesn't work. We're going to have to defraud the people. So they all get together and they think, well, how do they do that in Venezuela? How do they do that in China? How do they do that in Russia, Ukraine, Eastern Europe, and all the totalitarian regimes? How do they do that? Let's get buddies with those people. So that's what they did. They've been working at this for decades, and now they're here. This is their moment of glory. This is the great moment of resurrection and redemption, where communists can now take over the world. Once they take down America, it's going to be communism all over the world. So there's a lot of people outside of America watching right now about what's happening over here, because they're terrified. They don't want to live under a communist regime in America that looks like the so-called Democratic Party. What they want is their right to be a human being and respected, even though it might be clumsy or inefficient or inconvenient for corporations or criminals or banksters and fraudsters. So it's very, very, to me, it's very frightening. It's very thrilling that I'm witnessing this, but it's also making me very, very nauseous, because I do see, personally, America on its deathbed. I'm not saying that lightly. So, let me go back over here a second. So, oh, I just saw a note there from you, Gregory. What I think is happening, I'm going to fill in this other one here. This is the one we've been seeing for a long time, but I'm going to add it in now. This is the big fraud thing that's going on. This is the angular arrangement that indicates, like, what are we doing as humanity? What are we doing here? I don't really want to go into the depths of astrological explanations of why I see that the way I do, but that's what I see. And I see it unfolding here, especially in the United States with the American election. I see a massive fraud. I am in agreement with the Trump crowd that we are being defrauded. Okay? And there are other people who do not believe or accept this thing. They would rather believe the fraud. You can do that if you want. I got to look at Gregory's note there. I don't have any evidence, Gregory. The chances are they do have evidence, they do have knowledge of the astrological considerations. But if they were truly loving people, they would not interpret these energies as ways to how they can exploit people and basically turn them into automatons, betray them for their own expectation. I think astrology, I like to use it or consider it from a loving aspect. But when you put your notes there, Gregory, the way you've put them, you're right. I do not have any evidence. I guess to be honest, the chances are there are people somewhere inside the elites, whoever they are, wherever they are. I don't know of any astrologers who work inside the globalist system, the elites. I don't really know any. Maybe there are, and maybe they share very advanced, very useful information to the elites to use for their advantage. You know, maybe there's people in China who do all of that. You know, maybe it's forced astrological labor. You know, a bunch of hundreds of astrologers all sitting on their computers figuring out how we can work this energy for our advantage. So, no, you're right. I don't have advantage. I guess I was coming from a point of view of innocence, because most of the astrologers that I've ever come across are involved in this. They're interested in this for loving reasons. They're interested in how they can help humanity and how to heal themselves and how to heal each other. And so the whole idea of using astrology for abominable purposes is very sickening to me. I know they use it in Wall Street. I know they do. I've shown you the books that some advanced traders use in Wall Street for their advantage. I see that as inevitable. And I see that as a neutral perspective, because human beings are by nature, let's say, motivated to optimize a situation, even if it means it's someone else's loss. So, yeah, on Wall Street, maybe there are some astrologers on Wall Street who are highly linked in with the elites, sharing their information in how we can use this energy to, let's say, take advantage of the situation of the people. Okay. Thanks, Gregory, for bringing that out. It exposes my innocence and my naivety. I just automatically assumed, I didn't think about it, I didn't plan the show, but you're right. Astrology can be used for evil purposes. There you go. So, let me go back to this for a moment. I like to think, well, how can we make the best of this? Once you're aware of the fraud and the potential and the vulnerability of humanity being defrauded, what are you going to do about that? Because I don't personally like to be defrauded. I don't like to be betrayed. I don't like being manipulated and brainwashed through propaganda so that I end up being someone who believes in fraud. I don't want to live my life that way. So what's happening? So the way I see this happening right now is that we are witnessing live fraud happening on planet Earth. Okay? Very recently, Jupiter and Saturn moved into Aquarius. That's a very disruptive energy. That's an energy of revolution. That's the energy of absolute commitment to freedom and liberty, justice for all. And if you go back in history, just after 1776, when you go into the 1780s, 90s, and so on, that's when there was a lot of revolutionary energy, the revolutionary wars that started to happen in America and over in Europe. So I see, I hate to use certain words like violence, but Patricia, thank you very much. The war planet, Mars is in Aries here. At the 29th, it's actually at the 0 point, flipping into Taurus soon. So this is very volatile energy, and it's hard squaring all of these planets over here: Sun, Mercury, Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter. And that means that's an energy of a lot of anger, extreme anger, to the point of perhaps even violent anger. And so when I started seeing things this morning, and later in today, a couple of things that stuck with me. I saw, hundreds of thousands of people in Washington, D.C., all of them live Trump supporters. And Trump was chatting away about all the fraud that's being perpetrated on this country, and how it is a betrayal of the people, and how we need to reclaim our rights and our Constitution and our liberty and so on, and fight the fraudsters. And so he's basically doing that, but he has to operate within like a legal framework, a constitutional framework. So there's only so much that he can do. And what I'm not an insider, so I don't know, but it seems to me like this big rally is all about making a big show about people who actually voted and actually wanted their vote to count. It's very interesting that there's almost nobody there from the Democrats. That to me is very, very strange. If they so-called won, and they're trying to defend and protect their upcoming presidency of their Mr. Biden, you would think they would want to make their presence known, but I didn't see them anywhere. So I thought that was very, very, very strange. We the people, where are we the people who are, there for Joe? I didn't see it. So that was one thing that I noticed. I thought that was very strange. I would have expected a face-off. The next thing I noticed is that this big, huge rally was happening at the same time that the Electoral College vote was being discussed in Congress in Washington over here. And I know very little about the law, how this all works, but basically there's this vice president called Michael Pence. And he is in a very, very delicate position right now, because he has the legal right, apparently, to call out the Electoral College vote as counted. there's the electoral college vote, and then there's the popular vote, and they're both different kinds of vote, but they are both taken into consideration for the final declaration of who is our president. And according to the fraudsters, Joe is already our president by a long way. According to Donald, Donald is our president by a long way. So why the discrepancy? My personal feeling is because a massive fraud was perpetrated mechanically, sociologically, financially in the voting system where Trump never had a chance to begin. And that's been playing out on the news. If you're watching mainstream news, you wouldn't know much about it, but if you're hanging out here, you might be aware of it. So we have this fellow right now who's in Congress right now today going through this very painful process of having to formalize the the electoral vote. And he has the right to overturn the electoral vote. I only learned that in the last few days. And that scared me to death. Because then I realized, my gosh, this fellow Mike Pence, has immense power in his hands right now. Now, I'm not watching Congress at this very moment live, but in the few hours since early this morning to where I am right now, I've seen a few things. Number one was the massive rally. It started last night, yesterday, and it's even bigger today. The next thing that happened is later today in Washington, the process of counting the electoral vote and formalizing everything began. Mike Pence had to hold the chair to make this happen because he is the final decision maker. And there was a lot of contesting inside Congress. It went back and forth, left and right, very quickly within the first few hours. They go through every state, 50 states, whatever it is, alphabetically. Alaska, Arizona, and Arkansas, and so on. So it's going to take a long time to go through this. And within the first few states, everything became contested. And so they had to bang the gavel and say, Congress is in recess, Congress is in recess, because then they have to argue out the validity of the electoral votes for that particular state. So it could be a long day and a long night before any kind of decisions are made. But eventually, the clock is ticking. And there will come a moment where this fellow, Mike Pence, over here, will be the final decider. That's very, very scary to me. He is in a very difficult spot. There are a lot of people on the Republican side, on the Trump side, on the constitutional side, the Republicans, the Republic, the Patriots, the Constitutionalists, the Independents. They're scared like me. They are scared that Michael Pence has been compromised. He could be a traitor. And he could let down his boss, Donald. And then all of a sudden, what happens in America? Now, there's a couple people that I watch regarding global finance. And one of the themes with this fellow, he's called Crypto Teacher, is that it's all planned out. Everything is all planned out at the level of the global elites, for better or worse. And what we're witnessing in Washington is basically theater. Okay. But how does that work for we the people? So, a little while before I was going to start the show, I saw some live clips in Washington within an hour of the electoral vote counting formalized in Washington. I saw clips of hundreds and thousands about several thousand people starting to move up and into the Capitol building. They kind of went through barriers and went up to the Capitol building. And they are staging themselves there right now. They are refusing to step down. There are federal security officers around the building. And we're starting to see, like, it's just Trump people, and the Trumpers are there like, wow, this is actually happening. They are not going to let go. The war's not over. The election's not over. What they are in, this is what I'm seeing. I'm just telling you what I see. The Trumpers, the Republicans, they're anticipating that this fellow Mike Pence is going to betray them. They're anticipating a Judas. They're anticipating an ultimate fraud where Mike Pence, the second most powerful person in the country, is going to betray his people, his president, his party, because he's so deep inside and he is a puppet of the Chinese Communist Party, which owns the Democratic Party, along with the technocrats and the corporatocracy. So it's very scary. I don't know what's going to happen because I just don't know. So I was wondering to myself, what happens if this fellow, Michael Pence, at the end of the day, says, we are going to abide by the electoral vote as displayed in front of us. Thank you all for your arguments. Joe Biden is now the president. If that happens, I don't know what's going to happen across America. I really don't know. Because it's an absolute, utter travesty. It's, I would say, proof of fraud. And there are going to be people who are going to resist. Okay? Thank you, Patricia. I also noticed that a lot of the mainstream channels were not witnessing or broadcasting or showing anything about what's happening. They're showing little bits and clips about the electoral and, states for this and bits of cheery stuff about Joe. But really, Joe is kind of in the background doing nothing. It's very, very weird what's happening in America right now. Some people say it doesn't matter who the president is. And for a long time it's kind of been that way because it didn't really matter. A lot of the right-wingers are also sellouts through the corporatocracy, through the banks, and to China. But with the Trump crowd, they're all in. They're completely all in. Like, we want our Constitution back. We want our Declaration of Independence redeclared. We want to be reconstituted. We want to reclaim our republic. We want the basics. We want a reset in America. And that reset in America is very different from the global reset. The global reset is all about totalitarianism through the politics and banking system. And the great reset in America for the right wing is to reclaim things like truth, honesty, rule of law, justice, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, right to protect and defend yourself, the right to depose our leaders if they have committed treason against us, the people, the right to rule of law, right to justice. I don't know all the Constitution, but it's very scary to me because a lot of Americans have been very compliant and willing to accept a lot of compromise and shady stuff going on. But I think we've reached a kind of point of critical mass where things are going to be challenged. Things are very, very challenging. So right now, as I understand it from what I've seen, this fellow Mike Pence is in a pivotal position. I've also heard little notes and pieces here and there that Mike Pence has already had very deep and meaningful conversations with Donald and the president. And when Donald was doing his speaking in front of the public, in front of hundreds of thousands of people, live streaming all across the world, he was basically praying, hey Mike, he was saying it out to the people like this, like pretend I'm Donald. Like, hey Mike, I know you're in a really difficult spot right now. God bless you. The people love you. All you have to do is the right thing, okay? We're counting on you, Mike. Do not let us down. So Donald knows very, very well that his destiny is in the hands of this one fellow, Mike. And Mike knows that his destiny is very much in the decision that he's going to make. Left or right. Commies or Republicans. Democrats or patriots. Whatever it's going to be. It's going to come down. Like, so it doesn't matter. Like, if Mike Pence chooses to honor the president and honor what I consider to be the truth and a legitimate vote, and to deny the electoral college vote and to put it down, that's going to cause chaos and mayhem all over Washington and America. Because as far as those Americans are concerned, the vote is already in. Joe's already won. And then Mike comes in and says, excuse me, but this isn't working. Sorry, this whole election is a fraud. This state is fraud, this one, this, and this, and this one. So if we remove those states from the electoral voter count, then Trump wins. And so on and so on. I don't know how it's going to play out. I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I don't know any of that. Patricia says they're live. They're shooting tear gas now. So guess what? Given your notes there, yes, it is an absolute shitstorm. What did you expect? Look at the fricking charts, man. So it's going to play out however it's going to play out. Over here, let me do this again. So, if Patricia, Patricia, if they're already shooting tear gas, right, and there's things on fire right now, guess what? Which aspect in here do you think that relates to on the charts? Well, I'll just tell you. It's this one. Mars. Mars represents the warrior energy. The Mars is basically the energy that says fight or flight. Right now, Mars is saying, as far as like I would say the Republicans are concerned, we're going to fight. I don't know if the Republicans are instigating violence or anything. It might be that the Republicans, I am not watching a live stream right now, but to me it is inevitable that violence is going to erupt because of this election. So please brace yourselves accordingly. These are extremely harsh aspects here that to me personally indicate overt, direct violence. Okay? Violence against the elites, the authorities, the self-declared oligarchs, corporatocracy, central banks, globalists, new world orders, all of those folks. The thing about Aries energy is it tends to be very pure. I've got some Aries friends in my life, and I'm very glad because I know exactly where I stand with my Aries friends. If they're angry about something, you're going to know it. And they're going to be true and honest about that. If they're happy about something, they're going to know it. And if they have to, they will fight for what is right as far as they are concerned. So this is a chart for the whole of the world. So I see violence on the table. This could be like the convulsions on a deathbed, where the United States is theoretically potentially on its deathbed, potentially, and then it starts to activate its own immune system, its own survival instinct, where I don't know if it's ever happened to you, I'm very familiar with it in my lifetime. I know what it's like to be assaulted, raped, abused, financially, physically, emotionally. I'm used to weapons. I don't like the idea that I have to, maybe use weapons. I know I have been in wartime many times in past lives. I'm very aware of death. I'm very aware of what happens in the physical body when you are faced with a life and death situation. And if you're like some of the hundreds of thousands of people here in Washington who now literally fear for their rights, their freedoms, their independence, their country, maybe they will get violent. It wouldn't surprise me at all. On the other hand, there's a lot of violence that's being perpetrated already by people who are associated with the other side, the lefties and the Democrats. I don't want to get into that too much, because there's a lot of really sick, violent, ugly, disgusting stuff that's going on behind the scenes that I see is all connected with the New World Order. Deliberate, vicious, mercenary, violent thugs paid to do evil. Anyway, it's happening. Patricia's saying that the media is playing loop scenes. It's understandable. We might not know anything about what's happening until we see little things coming out on Twitter or something like that, or people's smartphones randomly showing stuff on YouTube and Facebook haven't had time to censor everything. So please expect a lot of volatility. It's happening right now. So, like I said earlier, this little chart, this represents extreme fraud, deception, lies, and betrayal on a global scale. And it's all deliberate. This is the hidden enemy. Okay? This is the energy of the invisible energy. That's the energy of like propaganda, lies, deception, mind control, perversions, where someone is smiling at you. Oh, you're a sweet little kid. Here's some candy. Now come and sit on my lap. Let's go back to my house and let's hang out together. You're so cute. You know, evil packaged as candy. So please understand that. And the next thing we have over here, let me go to my charts again. By the way, don't forget, we do have some green aspects here. Sweet, sweet, sweet energy. So I'm trying to stay neutral, even though I'm very fired up and angry. So I've seen this chart ahead for days. I've been watching this chart for actually weeks, actually for months now. And it's going to become even more volatile in the near future. In the next few days, I'm just going to do it right now, live here. The next few, well, a matter of hours, the moon is going to be over here. And when that happens, we're going to get this. Okay, watch this. Okay, Patricia's saying that Biden is addressing the nation right now. Okay? He's probably declaring himself president and trying to take the stage. I understand. It's all, in some ways, it's probably all rehearsed. By this time tomorrow, we're going to have this thing, okay, on top of this thing, okay? That's super, ultra, hyper stressful energy. Fraud and violence, okay? Mars against Moon and Libra. The Moon represents the United States, we the people. We the people are getting angry with ourselves and each other. I don't know how this is going to happen. I don't know what's going to come out of it. If you don't mind, I'd like to do something very out of character, very unusual right now. I can't prove any of this about what I'm going to do, but I'm just going to tell you what I did. Thank you, Ivona. I'm not going to predict the future, but I'm going to tell you that I did do something just before the show. Because I've had very mixed feelings about what's happening. Okay? Give me a second. It's the president. Hold on. Yes, Donald. Hold on. I think we cleared that up. Yeah, sorry. What was that? Yeah. Okay. The fix is in. So I'm just going to tell you something why I'm feeling very sick and frightened. I made a little pendulum. I don't usually like doing pendulums because it's all about yes or no. And you're trusting absolutely in the moment. And I calibrated my little pendulum. And I made sure that it was a very sensitive pendulum with a very long cord and a relatively light weight at the end. So it would be very, very hypersensitive to energy. And so I asked I don't know, here my invisible friends, my angelic beings, my spirit guides, heaven. I asked, like what people do with pendulums, pendulum users. I know people who do it. Hey, dear pendulum, show me a yes. Of course, I'm not waving it. I'm holding myself absolutely still, and I hold it in such a way that the thread is literally dangling down, not, so the chain has no bias. I do my best. I used to do dowsing, by the way, with water, using wood and so on, and I'm very good at it. So I do trust in these apparently weird and unprovable magical energies. Anyway, so I did this thing with my pendulum. I asked for show me a yes, show me a no. So I could see very clearly that yes was like this way and no was that way. And so I asked, what were the words that I used? Something like, I think it was something like, is Pence in deep trouble now, to the point where he's going to have to betray his country in order to save his own physical life? And it showed me a yes. So I think, personally, that told me the next thing. Oh, what's going to happen? And actually, I wish I'd written this down. Hello, JS. I asked, is this election fraudulent? And the pendulum went, woo, 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 yes. And then I said, okay, well, who's the president going to be? Is it going to be Joe Biden? And the pendulum did not move. And I said, well, is it going to be Donald Trump? And the pendulum did not move. And I went, is Donald going to continue despite whatever happens in the elections today, in January? And I got a big yes. So it kind of almost doesn't matter what the vote is. The way my little pendulum was talking to me is that Donald's going to be here whether some people like it or not. I don't know what that looks like. I think things are going to get very, very weird. This election is really, really tearing America and Americans apart. Really showing our true colors. You really discover a lot about who are you really? What side are you on? Do you know the reasons and why you're on which side? Have you been brainwashed? Have you been defrauded? Have you done your own homework and your own research? Are you comfortable with your own positions? And so on and so on. I'm trying to learn myself, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what's going to happen. But that's, I think, one of the reasons I was feeling so nauseous and sick and angry and headachy is because on the surface, I'm seeing America on its deathbed. I'm seeing this massive implosion in our country as we are literally taken over by a metastatic cancerous type of tumor in the form of the Democrats led by Joe Biden, who is owned by China. That whole concept makes me feel like I'm literally almost going to die. It's a disgusting feeling. And yet, there's this other energy field going on that I sense, which is almost too hard to believe, that there is an unfolding that makes me feel that there is hope for we the people, for the patriots, for people who want the republic, the people who do not want to give up their rights. Folding plane trapezoid. Are you good or evil? I don't know. You tell me. What about you? Are you willing to answer your own questions? I don't know what to do. I'm probably like a lot of Americans right now. I'm going like this, like, because it's all unfolding live now in real time. And there will be news broadcasts on the propaganda channels and on the honest news channels. There's information that's going to come out. There's going to be truth, and then there's going to be lies. And when I look at the chart, I see the subject, the concept of truth and lies being front and center. In other words, from my perspective, we the people, we have been betrayed for decades. And now we the people are saying, I'm sick of it. That's it. That's why I think Donald got elected, because he's not a politician. He's a complete freak of nature, and he got elected into office 4 years ago, and that was a huge problem for the Democrats back then. They were already convinced that they were going to have their world domination just continuing from 2008, and it didn't work. This crackpot, loony, revolutionary nutcase came into office. He was voted into office by we the people. He's still there. He's still the president today. Don't forget that, okay? We still have a few days left. So I see a lot of volatility over the next few weeks. Financial, political. There's going to be some, I don't know, flinging of arrows. I wouldn't be surprised to see violence. I wouldn't be surprised to see suppression. I wouldn't be surprised to see riots. But my feeling is that there will, if there is violence, it's in order to reclaim truth, honesty, justice, our Constitution, our rights, our freedoms, 1776 revisited. Thanks, JS. There are several news sources that I believe are trustworthy, and I'm going to make a little short list here for you, and then there's all the stuff that I don't trust. On YouTube, there's a channel called NTD. They do honest, good reporting. There's another one called Epoch Times. And if Path Traveler is here, she probably knows more than I do. There's Right Side. There's a fellow called Joshua Phillip. I think that's how you spell it. I can't. Hey, Path, are you here? If so, can you remind me some of the other reliable news sources? Let me see if I can find a way to find out. Crossroads, Breitbart. Gregory, if you're still here, you might know. I think there's a channel called Crossroads. And there's a handful of private YouTubers and hello JS, yeah. I've kind of limited my intake. I can only handle small amounts of news and information. I'm not very much of a news junkie, so I have to be very discriminating. But these are folks that I enjoy. I believe that they tell the truth. There's also another aspect of NTD. There's NTD China Focus. Which they're very concerned about the China-America relationship, so there's a lot of news there about America through the lens of China. It's very, very interesting. It's very encouraging. I wish I could remember some of the other channels. These are not big mainstreams. You're not going to find this anywhere. The channels that I do not trust are the obvious ones, of course. ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, and I'm just going to leave it at that. There's others that, do a decent job. There's other major newspapers and stuff. I saw one of the things. Hello. Hello, Chosen by God. That's a cool name. Hello, Chosen by God. If you're just arriving here, Chosen by God, Tarot Illumination has been ranting about, global politics, economics, like I do on my Wednesday little show. I don't have proof for anything that I ever said here or do here. I'm just sharing my opinions, okay? But just a recap for you, Chosen by God. We're dealing with fraud, deception, lies, betrayal on an epic global scale. And it is very clearly being acted out here in the United States. And things are getting violent, okay? The violence has been building up for months, but now we're at a point where it could increase and get ugly to the point where you're literally talking about violent revolution. I find it very hard to imagine that we'll actually have a violent revolution. But you never know. I don't know what's going to happen. America, there are a lot of people in America who are loaded up with guns and ammo, ready to do what has to be done. But it's a very, very serious thing to take up arms to protect and fight for your rights. Blanca S. Different search drives. I sometimes just use Google, YouTube, Yahoo. There's DuckDuckGo, which is nice and anonymous. There's others. There's a lot of good stuff out there. I just don't have a very big memory chip, so I can't remember all of them. But there's some very good sources of really, really good, honest information. I wish Path was here. She could tell me which ones are some of the other good ones. So Chosen by God is saying now, right now, the capital is going crazy. Well, it doesn't surprise me. All I have to do is look at the charts and basically say, well, what did I tell you? I think it's going to get extremely crazy, and it's going to accelerate and expand to the point where it's actually almost uncontrollable. Okay? I don't know if any of you, I've been, I don't want to, how am I going to do this? There are certain points in time where everything is out of control and you are living absolutely in the moment. My most recent experience with that was about 6 or 7 years ago, being in the hospital. I was dying from cancer and so on, and my body was convulsing. I'd lost a lot of blood. I was as white as a dead corpse, and my friend had dragged me into the hospital. There was just blood everywhere, and it was a mess. And I was going in and out of consciousness. I knew I was dying. I already knew that. And I'd already surrendered. I was like, okay, well, I guess that's the end of my story. But I didn't die. What happened is my body somehow or other decided to reclaim itself. It was beyond my control over here. And it was chaos. In the ICU, the it was the emergency ward. They have, people running around. There's, they didn't have enough blood to take care of me. So they tried to ship some more blood in from another hospital because I'd lost so much so quickly. And they were trying to plug me up, but it was a problem. But what can happen is these amazing feats of survival and willpower that defy any logic, they can start to operate inside your system. I already know what it's like to basically be left for dead and then come back. So this was another occasion, and I had already resigned. But what can happen is like these profound biological instincts will take over, where like somewhere inside of me, at the depth of my soul, in alignment with whatever relationships I had with my invisible friends, they basically decided, no, 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 this is not your time. The show is not over for you. You are going to come back. And so I did. I came back, and 5 or 6 days later, I was sort of gaining consciousness and things, and then I had to have surgery and all that kind of stuff. So I'm back, and then I had lots and lots of extremely powerful, alternative, radical healing, hands-on healing type of stuff, very advanced yoga stuff, and that helped dramatically. But what I'm trying to do is relate how you get to a point where you're a human being and things like logic and reason collapse and the limbic system takes over, fight or flight. Some people are like that all the time. They're constantly angry and raging, and all their behavior is just motivated by fear. And like they're like little kids, like, oh, I'm doing this or whatever it is that makes them happy, and then if something makes them angry, then they come out with it. There's no, they don't have any kind of, control systems. But what I'm sensing is that, like these, we're at a kind of a breaking point where it's like fight or flight. I know what it's like to be assaulted. I know what it's like to be held at the end of a weapon. And you do what you do. What do? Do you fight? Do you flight? So I've done both. I know what it's like to be taken down to the ground and basically disempowered completely to the point where you're facing death. I also know what it's like to fight back. I've done both. And when you're at that level of life and death, my personal feeling is that, because I'm not a trained fighter in this lifetime. I didn't go through SWAT training. I'm not a SEAL, Navy SEAL or anything like that. I don't have any heavy formal training in martial arts or weaponry or anything like that. My body is pretty light, quite flimsy. I'm very kind of broken up in certain parts. But it's amazing what happens where people reach a breaking point and they say, you know what? Enough is enough is enough. But it's not coming from here. It's coming from here and from the gut. And they basically say, okay, I'm just going to do whatever the I have to do. Because I feel like my life, my liberty, my rights are in jeopardy. And that can feel like you're going to die. There are a lot of people who are taking this so seriously that they are willing to take up arms in order to protect and defend themselves, their family, their people, their constitution, their country, their independence. So there's a lot of people out there ready to do that, but they don't want to do it. None of those people want to really, really do it because a lot of them are, like, say, God-fearing people who know what it's like to take up arms and do some of the most despicable things that you can do. So you don't take that lightly. But you get to a point where it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do? So personally, I'm saying don't be surprised if you see violent eruptions in the near future. Don't be surprised if you see that extending and expanding in the near future. Mars is on the 0 degree right now, moving from Aries into Taurus. It's going to be a very different energy. It's very physical. Mars in Taurus is going to be very, very angry if it feels as though its land, its money, its property, its houses, its values, its family, its earth, its water is in jeopardy. I think Mars in Aries is fierce enough as it is, but you take that to the physical level where your physicality feels threatened, and then when Mars conjoins Uranus in the very near future, that's still going to be very hard squared to the Aquarian energy. I see the energy of revolution. I see the energy of armed, potentially violent revolution. I'm just calling it out. I wish I didn't have to, but that's what I see. I'm not saying there's going to be massive war, but I do feel that there's very, very high potential for violence in terms of how America is sorting itself out now. America versus America. There are people who've written how America will never fall to external enemies. If America does go down, it's going to go down from the inside out, like cancer. And that's what's happening right now. America, I see, is very close to its deathbed, and it's part of it is struggling to survive, and there's the other external energy which has infected this country in the form of a massive cancerous, metastatic, deadly tumor. And so there's the healthy part of ourselves, which I feel that I'm just sharing my opinions. I relate to that side where I feel I'm violated, where I feel like we've been betrayed. Okay? I'm sick of it. What am I going to do? I'm not sure. Other people are sick of it. They already know what they're going to do. They're already very well armed and prepared. Okay? But you don't want to be the one to pull the first shot. That's where things get awkward. So, anyway, I don't want to take up any more of your day. We've been here more than long enough. Keep an eye out for things. Number one, love yourself. Be very, very true to yourself. Just be willing to examine yourself and find out, like, who am I really? What do I really believe? What do I really value? Who do I believe? You know, do you believe? I mean, so much of what you might believe is truth is propaganda. It's misinformation. It's deception, lies, and betrayal in order for you to become very compliant and very subservient as a debt cow or a debt slave, you know. That's a story we've talked about many times. Are you aware of that or not? There's also other ways to look at the story, but I think what's going to happen, a lot of things are going to be brought into sharp, clear focus, where it's going to become very evident that eruptions are happening in the United States, and I think the United States is in a fight for its own life, for its own existence. And you get to that point where, if necessary, people use violence. When I was a kid and a younger fellow, and there were occasions where I was taken down, I did resist. But I'm not a trained fighter. I just went berserk like a wild animal until I took down my opponents. I didn't bring any of it on. I hate violence. I'm terrified of it. I've done both. I've taken down an oppressor, I have resisted an oppressor, and I have been taken down by an oppressor, violator, abusers, all of that. I know what it's like to be both. I don't want any of it. I don't want any of that stuff. Anyway, Chosen by God is saying the Capitol's going crazy right now. I'm going to take a break, check in with everyone in a few days. We'll see what happens. Don't be surprised if I put up a few little mini videos in the near future, because things are getting very, very volatile right now. There's a lot of stuff happening with the astrology and the politics and the economics of this country, and that has a ripple effect across the whole freaking planet. Take care, everybody. Look after yourselves. Take a good look in the mirror. Figure out, who are you? What are you really doing? What do you really feel? Be prepared to take a stand. I'm just going to wrap it out here.